Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording for the part of the lesson that has us taking a introduction and overview of India, looking at the culture, geography, and history. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to today's lesson and to scroll down the correct section and get ready to answer the key concept questions or complete the exercises that coincide with the reading. Please remember that you can start and stop this part of the presentation at any time for detailed clarity or repetition. Please also be advised that you will be cued when to break from the presentation to go ahead and complete the exercises accordingly. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to India. An introduction. India is a large country in southern Asia. It is named after the Indus River with a population of 1.35 billion. It is the second most populated country in the world right after China. Nature. India has a varied landscape, from rainforests in the northeast to the Thar Desert in the west. The world's highest mountain range, the Himalayas, is located in the north. The country is home to about 76,000 animal species. Some of these include tigers, lions, leopards, elephants, rhinos, and bears. India is the only country in the world where both tigers and lions live in the wild. People and culture. The Indian population is made up of various groups who have blended together for thousands of years. Hundreds of different languages are spoken in India, but only 22 of these are recognized as official languages by the government. Some languages with a sizable speaking population include Hindi, Bengali, and Marathi Hindi, and English, too, are spoken by most Indians as a second language. The majority of the Indian population lives in villages, and its society is divided into social groups called castes. People are born into these groups and can never change caste. Each group has its own traditional occupations, diet, and customs. Officially, the caste system has been illegal in India for over 50 years, but it still plays an important role in society today. Hinduism is the most dominant religion in India. About 80% of the population identify themselves as Hindu. Other major religions include Islam at 14%, Christianity at 2.3%, and Sikhism at 1.7%. And government and the economy. India is a democratic country, and the country has a president who is the head of state and a prime minister who leads the government. The prime minister is the most powerful person of the government, and the parliament is responsible for making laws and overseeing the work of the government. Members of parliament are elected by the people every 5 years. India has one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and is one of the largest in the world too. Despite its large economy, nearly 30% of the Indian population lives in poverty. Services and manufacturing industries are the largest sectors of the economy, however, and the agricultural sector employs most Indian people. You may proceed to answer the questions or complete the exercises at this time, and when you're finished, you may resume the next part of the presentation. Let's resume to the next part of the presentation, on geography. So India makes up most of the Indian subcontinent. It is a region that stretches from the Himalayas to the shores of the Indian Ocean. Most of India's land is a peninsula that extends into the Indian Ocean called the Indian Peninsula. The Himalayas cover much of the northern India region and are one of the most highest and longest mountain ranges. Most of its peaks are covered in snow throughout the year. Kanchenjunga is the country's highest point at 28,169 feet. The Himalayas were formed about 50 million years ago, when tectonic plates of Earth's crust collided. Some of the mountains you will find in the Indo-Gangetic Plain. The plain is the mostly drained by the Ganges River, which runs parallel to the Himalayan mountains. The Ganges is India's most important river and is considered sacred by many Hindus. The Indo-Gangetic Plain consists of rich, fertile soil and is intensively farmed. The Indus River is India's longest river too. It flows through the northwesternmost point. The name India is derived from this river too. The Deccan Plateau dominates much of southern India. It is dry area that is scattered with scrub forests, and the western eastern Ghats are low mountains that run along the western eastern sides of the Deccan Plateau. They separate the plateau from a narrow coastal plain. And the Thar Desert makes up a vast area in northwestern India. It is a rocky and sandy desert. Most of the desert consists of sand dunes separated by sandy plains. At this time, you may answer the key concept questions and proceed to complete the exercises. Once you're finished, you may resume to the next reading. Let's resume to the next reading. On history. First, ancient history, the Indus River Valley Civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization developed in the Valley of the Indus on the border of modern-day India and Pakistan. The civilization is also known as the Harappan Civilization. It existed between 3300 BC and 1500 BC, about the same time as the ancient Egyptian civilization. Remains of the Indus civilization were discovered in 1920, but much about its history remains somewhat of a mystery. One of the main reasons for this is that the Indus script has not been able to be translated by historians. Also, the Indus did not leave much behind, such as weapons, temples, or artwork. Now, the civilization consisted of several cities and many small settlements along the Indus River and the coast of the Arabian Sea. The river and its tributaries created a large floodplain with fertile soil. Most people lived in farming communities. They constructed water channels from the rivers to drain their farmlands. The Indus people grew crops such as grapes, wheat, and melons, and they were one of the first people in the world to grow cotton and weave cloth. At its peak between 2600 BC and 1900 BC, the Indus Valley civilization had a population of over 5 million people. Harappan and Mohenjo-Daro were the largest cities of the Indus Valley civilization. They were one of the first major urban centers in the world, and these cities were well organized with straight streets and brick homes. Their homes had multiple stories and sophisticated drainage and water systems. This kept the cities clean and dry. Historians have not found any evidence of the existence of kings or priests in the civilization, however, because of its well-planned urban culture. The civilization must have been well governed. It is also believed that the leaders of the civilization promoted an equal society, since all houses had the same access to water and drainage. The civilization significantly declined between 2000 BC and 1700 BC. Some historians argue that the Indus people were defeated by invaders such as the Aryans or the Vedic civilization. Other experts believe that the civilization ceased to exist because of environmental factors such as earthquakes, droughts, or floods. At this time, you may answer the key concept questions or complete the exercises, and may resume to the other parts of the reading. Let's resume to the next section of the reading. On more history. Now, the first people to inhabit the region that is now known as India arrived about 55,000 years ago. The first advanced civilization was developed by the Harappans between 3300 BC and 1500 BC, called the Indus Valley Civilization, like we said. In terms of Vedic civilization, after the decline of the Harappans around 1500 BC, the Vedic society emerged. The people of the Vedic civilization are also known as Aryans. The Aryans brought an early form of Hinduism and social structure that eventually became the Indian caste system that is still in use today. The Vedic civilization was made up of various clans that raised cattle and lived in small villages. Their society flourished between 1500 BC and 500 BC. Persian and Greek invasion. The Persians, who were ruled by King Cyrus the Great, attacked India in 539 BC. They took control of the northwestern India and made it part of the Persian Empire. They largely influenced Indian society in terms of governance and culture, and the Persian dominance of the region vanished when the Greeks invaded in 327 BC. They were led by their famous conqueror Alexander the Great. They fought various battles throughout northwestern India, but soon returned westward in 326 BC. The Mayuran Empire. In 322 BC, the Mayuran Empire rose to power. They united most kingdoms that existed throughout the Indian subcontinent. During the leadership of Ashoka the Great, the Mayurans were one of the most powerful empires in Indian history, covering most of modern-day India and Pakistan. Since the kingdoms were led by a centralized government, Ashoka was able to build a major network in trade and introduce a single currency. A network of regional governors provided justice and security for merchants and farmers. After a series of weak kings, the Mayuran dynasty began to decline. Local rulers began to take charge of smaller regions until the Mayuran Empire had totally disappeared in 185 BC. And then came along the Gupta Empire. The Gupta Empire existed between approximately 320 AD and 550 AD, and covered much of the Indian subcontinent. The empire rose out of the small kingdoms that were part of the Mayuran Empire a few centuries earlier. Just like Ashoka of the Mayuran Empire, the Gupta Empire had a centralized government, and the Gupta period was not characterized by trade and wealth, but is marked by its achievements in the arts, science, and religion. Its rulers highly valued artists and scientists and paid them for their work, which is a rare occurrence in ancient civilizations. The empire began to decline in the mid-6th century as its rulers couldn't maintain law and order, and there were numerous attacks from tribes and foreign powers. Muslim rule. Now, in the 8th century, Muslims began invading northern India. In the centuries that followed, Islam spread over India. So in 1206, they established a Muslim kingdom called the Delhi Sultanate. The Sultanate was run from what is now the city of Delhi, and it is considered a series of cities in the Delhi region. The most powerful Muslim empire in India was the Mughal Empire. It was established by descendants of Genghis Khan, a Mongolian warrior ruler. The Mughal Empire defeated the Delhi Sultanate in 1526, and Emperor Akbar is considered the greatest ruler of the Mughals. During his rule between 1556 and 1605, the Mughal Empire greatly expanded its territory and controlled nearly the entire Indian subcontinent. The Mughals began to lose their grip over India, and in the 7th and 8th centuries as the Indian people began rebelling against the Muslim rulers. Next came British rule. In the early 18th century, several European trading companies, including the East India Company, began to establish trading posts in India. After 100 years of numerous battles, Britain's East India Company controlled much of India by 1849 and ran a very profitable trading empire. After uprisings of the local Indians, the British government interfered and made India part of the British Empire. In 1858, the British divided their Indian territory into provinces which were ruled by a governor. And then came independence. In the late 1800s, the Indian people became increasingly fed up with the British rulers. They wanted to have their own government. They then created a political party called the Indian National Congress. In 1920, Mahatma Gandhi, leader of the Independence Party, urged his countrymen to resist British rule by participating in peaceful protest. India gained its independence in 1947 in order to maintain peace and avoid religious conflicts. The country was divided into a Muslim part, Pakistan, and a Hindu part, India. Please proceed to the next part of the lesson where you will answer the key concept questions and complete the exercises. When you're finished, you may resume to the next presentation and resume accordingly.